I married him not because I loved him. I married him because I was broken, because I was tired, because I needed somewhere to put all the pain I didn't know how to carry anymore. And maybe he did too. Maybe that was the beginning of us. Not love, not fate. Just two lonely people, both abandoned in different ways, finding each other in the wreckage. The cruelest part is, even on my wedding day, with that white dress on my body and a ring on my finger, there was still another man living inside my heart. I used to love someone with everything I had, the kind of love that makes you forgive too much, wait too long, shrink yourself a little more each day just to keep someone else comfortable. I was always there for him, always the one who understood, the one who stayed, the one who gave, the one who believed that if I loved him deeply enough, purely enough, patiently enough, one day he would love me the same way. But some people don't return love. They take it. They use it. They lean on it when they need warmth, and walk away the second they find something better. I didn't learn that slowly. I learned it all at once. One day, I brought him food. I remember that part so clearly. I had been worried he was working too hard, worried he hadn't eaten, worried, like I always was, about everything that mattered to him more than it ever mattered to him. And when I got there, he wasn't alone. There was another woman with him. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't out of place. She looked comfortable, like she already belonged in the life I had been begging to be chosen for. I still remember how still my body went, how cold my hands felt, even though the food I brought was still warm. I asked who she was, and just like that, my whole world split open. He told me she was the woman he was going to marry. No guilt, no hesitation, no apology, just that. And then came the part that hurt even more. The truth I was never supposed to hear out loud. That I was good enough to love in private, but not the woman he would choose in public. Not the woman he would build a future with. Not the woman he thought was worthy of his real life. There are heartbreaks that make you cry. And then there are heartbreaks that make you go numb. That day, I became numb. I walked out of there like someone had emptied me from the inside. I couldn't hear the traffic, couldn't feel the ground under my feet, couldn't even tell how long I had been crying. I just remember thinking, so this is what it feels like to lose your pride before you lose the person. And then he showed up, quietly. He didn't rush toward me. He didn't ask 100 questions. He didn't try to fix it with the usual empty words people say when they don't know what to do with your pain. He just sat beside me, handed me a tissue, and stayed. That kind of silence, the kind that doesn't pressure you, doesn't judge you, doesn't force you to be okay, can save a person. After a while, he told me something simple. He had just been rejected too. The woman he loved had chosen someone else. I turned and looked at him then, really looked at him. And for the first time, right there in the middle of my own heartbreak, I saw another wounded person trying to breathe through his own. Maybe that's why I didn't push him away. Maybe that's why he kept coming back. Not in a dramatic way, not with big confessions, not with promises, just quietly. When I couldn't sleep, he stayed on the phone with me. When my mother got sick, he showed up before anyone else. When I stopped talking, he never forced words out of me. When I cried, he didn't tell me to move on. He just stayed. And sometimes, that kind of kindness is harder to receive than cruelty, because cruelty makes you angry. But kindness, Kindness makes you aware of how unfair you're being. I knew he cared about me. That was obvious. What I didn't know was how to give anything back. Because the truth is, I didn't fall into his arms because I loved him. I fell into his life because I was lonely, because I was devastated, because I was humiliated, because a part of me wanted to prove to the man who broke me that I could still be chosen, that I could still move on, that I could still become someone else's wife, that I could still survive without him. There's nothing noble about that. It was pain and pride and exhaustion. That's all it was. And then one day, he asked me to marry him. Softly, carefully, like he already knew my heart was still bleeding. I should have said no. Maybe a better woman would have. But I was tired of hurting, tired of remembering, tired of waking up every day feeling like the person who broke me was still deciding whether I was enough. So I said yes. And that yes did not come from love. It came from loneliness, from pity, from wounded pride, from the selfish hope that maybe a new life could silence an old pain. Everyone said I was lucky. They looked at me like I had finally won something, like I had found the good man, like I had been rescued. And maybe I had. But rescue and love are not always the same thing. He was a good husband, the kind of good that sneaks up on you. He remembered what I liked to eat. He noticed when I was having a hard day before I said a word. He took care of my family like they were already his. He fixed little things around the house before I even noticed they were broken. He never interrogated my silence, never demanded more than I could give, never punished me for the parts of me that were still stuck in the past. And somehow, that made it worse. Because the gentler he was, the more ashamed I felt. Some nights, I would lie beside him in the dark and wonder what kind of woman marries a good man while still carrying the shadow of someone else. A selfish one, a damaged one, a woman who doesn't yet understand that being loved gently is not something to take for granted. Then one day, he found a few things I had kept. Old messages, an old letter, little pieces of a life I should have let die a long time ago. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse me. He just looked at them, then looked at me, and asked very quietly, "You still haven't let go, have you?" And I had no answer. Because sometimes you don't keep the past because you still want it. Sometimes you keep it because you still can't believe what it did to you. Because part of you is still standing in that old room, still hearing those words, still wondering how you could have loved that hard and still been treated like nothing. But marriage cannot live on half a heart. Sooner or later, the person who keeps giving starts to grow tired. And I think that was the first time I became afraid. Not of the past, of losing him. Losing the one person who had never once made me beg to be chosen. And then life did what it always does. It tested me. The woman who had once rejected him came back. It was nothing dramatic, just a meeting, a conversation, a late apology. But that night, I sat waiting for him to come home. And for the first time, my chest felt tight in a way I recognized immediately. It was fear. Not the fear of being embarrassed, not the fear of being left behind by someone toxic. It was the fear of losing someone good. The fear of losing the one person who had held my broken pieces so carefully that I almost forgot how shattered I had been. And that was when I knew. My past wasn't what owned my heart anymore. He was. Not because he came into my life like fire, but because he stayed like light. Steady, warm, unshaken. And then I learned one more thing. He had known of me long before I ever noticed him. Long before the sidewalk, long before the tissues, long before two lonely people became each other's shelter. He had seen me years ago, back when I was still untouched by heartbreak, back when I laughed easily, back when I still believed love was simple. And somehow, life brought him back to me only after I had already been destroyed by someone else. I asked him the question I should have asked much sooner. If you knew I didn't love you, why did you marry me? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I don't think I'll ever forget. If being with me could make your pain a little lighter, that was enough for me. If I could be the place where you rested until you found your way back to yourself, that was enough. I just hoped, maybe one day, you would finally see me. And I broke. Not because of the man who hurt me, but because of the man who had loved me without trying to own me. The man from my past gave me intensity, obsession, confusion, the kind of love that keeps you starving and calls it passion. But this man gave me peace. And peace is strange when all you've ever known is chaos. At first, it doesn't feel exciting. It feels unfamiliar, too quiet, too safe. Until one day you realize, safe is exactly what your heart has been begging for all along. I married him not because I loved him, but I stayed because somewhere along the way, quietly, slowly, almost without noticing, I did. Not the kind of love that burns the whole house down, the kind of love that builds one, the kind that waits, the kind that protects, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be real. And maybe that is the saddest thing. Not that I was betrayed, not that I was broken, not even that I entered a marriage for all the wrong reasons. Maybe the saddest thing is this. Sometimes the person who truly loves you doesn't arrive at the moment when your heart is ready. Sometimes they arrive when you're still bleeding for someone else. And sometimes you only realize their worth after they've spent so long loving you gently that your soul finally learns how to rest. So if anyone ever asks me what hurts the most, I won't say betrayal. I'll say this. It's realizing too late that the one who held your heart with the most care was never the one you were willing to die for. He was the one who quietly taught you how to live again.